This is Section 4, Schizophrenia, Personality, and Miscellaneous Disorders, as well as the law. Is schizophrenia the same as split personality? Schizophrenia is a pattern of severely disturbed thinking, emotion, perception, and behavior that seriously impairs the ability to communicate and relate with others and disrupts most other aspects of daily functioning. Schizophrenia occurs in 1 to 2% of the population worldwide, about equally among men and women, and tends to strike in adolescence or early adulthood. About 40% of those with schizophrenia improve with treatment and are able to function reasonably well. The better a person's pre-morbid adjustment, the level of functioning before symptoms begin, the better the ultimate prognosis for his or her disease outcome. Symptoms of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia does not mean split personality. Rather, a split occurs between mental faculties so that emotions may be at odds with thoughts or perceptions. The mind is split from reality. Schizophrenic thought and language are often disorganized. Neologisms are new words, meaningful only to the speaker. Loose associations involve the tendency to move from one thought to another unconnected, or only superficially connected thought. A word salad is verbal expression of a jumble of unconnected thoughts. The content of schizophrenic thinking is also often disturbed. Delusions or false beliefs of persecution are common, like the CA is tapping my phone. Ideas of reference are delusions that everything is somehow related to oneself, like the radio static is sending messages to me. Delusions of grandeur may be present, like I am God's personal messenger. In thought broadcasting, one thinks that one's thoughts are heard by others. In thought blocking or withdrawal, one thinks that others prevent or steal one's thoughts. And in thought insertion, it's the belief that others' thoughts appear in one's mind. Problems with attention and perception may appear. Many with schizophrenia experience hallucinations or false perceptions of non-existent sensations. Hallucinations are usually auditory in the form of voices. Schizophrenics may have flat affect, showing little or no emotion. Those who do display emotion may do so inappropriately. Some schizophrenics appear agitated, waving their limbs, grimacing, or pacing. Others move little, holding a single posture for hours. Low motivation, poor social skills, poor personal hygiene, and an inability to function day to day are other common characteristics. Categorizing schizophrenia. Schizophrenic symptoms are sometimes divided into positive symptoms, additions of abnormality like hallucinations and delusions, and negative symptoms, subtractions of normality like lack of pleasure and emotion and social withdrawal. Some divide symptoms into whether they are psychotic, like hallucinations or delusions, disorganized, like incoherent speech or chaotic behavior, or negative, lack of speech or motivation. Some believe that each symptom cluster may be traceable to different causes. Thus, schizophrenia is often referred to as the schizophrenia spectrum. A table in the text lists the DSM-4 subtypes of schizophrenia, and they are paranoid schizophrenia, delusions of persecution or grandeur are accompanied by anxiety, anger, argumentativeness, or jealousy. Signs of impairment may be subtle. People with disorganized schizophrenia have jumbled and unrelated delusions and hallucinations, incoherent speech, inappropriate affect, and neglected personal hygiene. Catatonic schizophrenia involves disorder of movement. The person alternates between total immobility or stupor and wild excitement. In stupor, wavy flexibility occurs when people assume virtually any posture physically imposed on them, but they will not initiate movement on their own. Undifferentiated schizophrenics show abnormal behavior, thought, and emotion not easily placed in any other subtype. And residual schizophrenics have experienced a prior schizophrenic episode but are not currently displaying symptoms. What are the causes of schizophrenia? The biological factors. Schizophrenia tends to run in families. Schizophrenia most likely involves many genes that combine with other factors to cause the disorder. Many with schizophrenia have less tissue in areas of the brain that are involved in emotional expression, thinking, and information processing. Abnormalities in brain chemistry, especially in neurotransmitter systems that use dopamine, play a role in schizophrenia symptoms. Neurodevelopmental abnormalities that are caused by disruptions in brain development during the period from before birth through childhood, such as prenatal trauma, may play a role. The psychological and sociocultural factors. Psychological factors and sociocultural influences are not considered primary causes of schizophrenia, but they may contribute to the appearance of schizophrenia and influence its course. The vulnerability theory. The diathesis stress model forms the basis for the vulnerability theory, which suggests that vulnerability to schizophrenia is mainly biological. Different people have different degrees of vulnerability. Vulnerability is influenced partly by genetics and partly by the environment, and the psychological components may help determine whether the disease occurs and its course, if it does occur. Personality disorders. Personality disorders are long-standing, inflexible ways of behaving that are not disorders as much as dysfunctional styles of living. They can create problems for those who display them and for others. Personality disorders are grouped into 3 clusters. The odd-centric cluster includes paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality disorders. The anxious-fearful cluster includes dependent, obsessive-compulsive, and avoidant personality disorders. The dramatic, erratic cluster includes histrionic, narcissistic, borderline, and antisocial personality disorders. In antisocial personality disorder, formerly moral insanity, psychopathy, or sociopathy, one shows a long-term pattern of irresponsible, impulsive, unscrupulous behavior beginning early in life. Antisocial personality disorder is the most serious personality disorder from the view of public safety. A hallmark of those displaying antisocial personality is a lack of anxiety, remorse, or guilt. Some research suggests that antisocial personality disorder may result from a genetic predisposition. Psychological and sociocultural factors that may contribute include various features of impoverished home environments. And now just a sampling of other psychological disorders. We'll look first at psychological disorders of childhood. The externalizing or under-controlled category of disorders includes behaviors that disturb people in the child's environment. Conduct disorders involve aggression, disobedience, destructiveness, and other obnoxious behavior. In attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, children are impulsive and hyperactive and/or inattentive. They cannot concentrate on an activity or control themselves as well as other similar-aged children from their culture. The internalizing or over-control category of disorders includes children suffering internal distress, especially depression, anxiety, and social withdrawal. In separation anxiety disorder, a child constantly worries about being lost, kidnapped, or injured, or that a parent will be harmed. Children with pervasive developmental disorders, also known as autistic spectrum disorders, show severe deficits in communication, impaired social relationships, and unusual behavior patterns. According to the DSM-5, autism and autism-like disorders are now classified as autism spectrum disorder. In previous editions, the diagnoses were separate. Autistic disorder is a very severe condition, usually evident within 30 months after birth. Autistic babies show no sign of attachment to anyone, and they often show serious language development problems. Asperger's disorder is a less severe autistic spectrum disorder. And then moving on to substance-related disorders. A substance-related disorder is the use of a psychoactive drug like alcohol, cocaine, or heroin for months or years in ways that harms the user or others. Addiction is a physical need for a substance or a psychological or physiological dependence. Substance abuse is a pattern of use that carries serious social, legal, or interpersonal problems. Alcohol use disorders. Alcohol dependence and alcohol abuse, commonly called alcoholism, is a pattern of frequent alcohol use that may lead to addiction and almost always causes severe social, physical, and other problems. Alcoholism is implicated in half of all traffic fatalities, homicides, and suicides annually. It also figures prominently in rape, child abuse, overall hospitalization, and work absenteeism. The biopsychosocial model sees alcoholism as due to a combination of genetic characteristics and what has been learned in social and cultural environments. Heroin and cocaine dependence. Dependence causes serious health problems due to the drug itself and the poor eating and health habits it engenders. Death also occurs from overdose, contaminated drugs, acquired immune deficiency syndrome or AIDS, or suicide. Continued drug use and its accompanying problems are probably results of biological predispositions that interact with psychological processes and stressors that occur within specific social and cultural contexts. In other words, it is due to an interaction between nature and nurture elements. And the last little section on here, mental illness and the law. Insanity is a legal term, not a psychiatric diagnosis. It provides two types of legal protection for people with severe mental disorders who are accused of crimes. Many countries around the world have similar laws. If at the time of a trial a court believes that a person cannot understand charges against him or her, or assist in his or her own defense, the person is declared mentally incompetent to stand trial. The person is sent to a mental institution until found mentally competent to stand trial or permanently ineligible. Severe mental illness can sometimes legally shield one from punishment for a crime, even if brought to trial. In about 1/3 of U.S. states, people can be found not guilty by reason of insanity if, at the time of the crime, mental illness prevented them from first, understanding what they were doing, second, knowing the act was wrong, and third, resisting the impulse to do wrong. In federal cases and in many states, the third irresistible impulse criterion has been eliminated from the definition of insanity. Some states allow a verdict of guilty but mentally ill. The people who receive this verdict are supposed to receive treatment while in prison, though they seldom do. Insanity pleas occur only in 1 out of every 200 felony cases in the U.S. and are successful in only 2 of every 1,000 attempts. Even when the plea is successful, the defendant is usually hospitalized for much longer than they would have spent in prison. And that is it for our psychological disorders. Chapter 13 will take a look at the treatment of these disorders.